Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Brother Hush, and welcome to another show, the PHIner Life Show, where we give you the latest and greatest in veteran, content, entertainment, all that snazzy stuff. We try to give you some knowledge, and we're gonna get it going with my boy Ross is in the house from High Heroes USA. Listen, man,
Happy to be here.
let me tell you something. Ross is a G, okay? He's a straight up G because he's just illustrious Army career, as an officer, TAC officer too. We're gonna get into that, and just really, climbing up the ladder with Higher Heroes USA, connecting veterans and service members and their families to employment opportunities. We've recently Mu Beta Phi Military Fraternity Incorporated. We recently became one of your referral partners with our Liberty Work program to get veterans, military families back to work. So we're going to get somewhere into that. But let's start off with you, Ross. So, like I said, illustrious Army career. I have to start it off. What made you want to join the military? Why'd you do it? Did you do it on a lunch break? Did you do it because somebody dared you? Why? Why, Ross? Why?
Worst teenage rebellion ever, actually. So I grew up in an Army family. Long history of service. My grandfather fought in World War II. My dad and his brothers all served in the Army. It was one of those families where, you join the military, that's how you go to college, or you figure it out on your own. But I always knew that the Army was going to be part of my life. And then it wasn't until I was a kid that I actually went and saw a football game at West Point. And I was kind of obsessed with the place. I thought, I was in 7th or 8th grade, and I was like, this is where I want to go to college. And everyone's like, why are you thinking about college right now? You haven't even got into high school. And my dad specifically told me, don't go there. You're going to hate it. You're not going to like it. Go to where I went. Go to Florida State. And, everybody as a teenager rebels against their dad in some way. And mine was to reject his idea of going to Florida State and go instead to a military college. And he definitely had, a great perspective on what I might have enjoyed about college rather than marching and getting in trouble and, get my head shaved and all that stuff. But it's still, I wouldn't change it. It set me up to be who I am and gave me a friend group for life.
I'm waiting for you to get to the good part, Ross. You joined, got aviation background, became an aviation officer. Let's go through your career. You went from aviation officer, company commander, and then assistant to a general. Yeah. Just give it to us in 3 to 4, 5, 15 minutes. Yeah. The whole shit.
I'll give you the quick one. So, get to West Point. I kind of do exactly what my dad thought I would. I get in a lot of trouble. I was well known in my class for getting in trouble. But I scraped by, I survived. At one point in time when I was a cadet, General Shinseki was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he knew who I was as a cadet for getting in trouble, which is not a good place to be. You don't want that ever. But, just put your nose to the grindstone, get through it. I managed to eke by the last person in my class to get a slot to be an aviation officer and fly helicopters. And that was kind of where I found my rhythm in the Army. I got down there, and now it was about actually doing the work, or, the study that I was putting into it directly reflected my performance in the aircraft. And I was super fortunate to fly with some outstanding guys who had fought in Vietnam, and they taught me a lot about, what did it mean to support service members on the ground, and how did you employ aviation assets to do that mission? And it got me really fired up and excited about the Apache and attack helicopter operations. You have that firepower, you're right at the tip of the spear, and your mission is to protect the U.S. service member on the ground. It doesn't matter how you do that. You could do that through employing fires, you could do that by being a target, but either way, your job is protect them. And it kind of captivated me from the get-go. And I got to go through the Apache transition course, learn to fly that, and I got stationed at Fort Hood. And it was kind of, all hands on deck. Just before the surge, everybody was either coming home from Iraq, going to Iraq, getting ready to go to Iraq, and that's kind of where I fell. Is the unit had finished their rest cycle. We were gearing up to go again. This was my first deployment. I'm flying with warrant officers who are getting up on their third and fourth deployment already, and crew chiefs who know Baghdad like the back of their hand. And I was super fortunate to be trained by these men and women that taught me not just what the aircraft was supposed to do, but who am I supposed to be as their platoon leader? How am I supposed to lead them effectively? It really did shape my leadership style, flying with outstanding officers like that, where on the ground, like it's yes sir, no sir, kind of salute and move out stuff. But in the aircraft, they're in charge, and I'm there to do what they said, because I was the new guy. I'm the gunner. They're the pilot in command. And it really shaped kind of my style of leadership. And so we deploy. We get extended on that first trip to Iraq during the surge. Baghdad was a pretty crazy place in 06, 07, 08 time period. Our unit, lost some guys. We had a lot of conflict. It was a crazy time to be in Baghdad. We came back. I was preparing to, do like officers do, and you move on. You go to school, and got a chance to command a company. And so I stayed at Fort Hood, did another deployment to Baghdad with that unit as an Apache company commander. And then finally came back, and it was time to get ready to go to the captain's career course, which is what you're supposed to do as an officer and grow your career. And instead I got scooped up by a general to be their aide. So by the time I finally got to the career course, I was like the oldest guy in the class. I've been through 2 commands, I've been a general's aide, I've been on brigade staff, battalion staff, everything in between. And I was supposed to be a major already, basically, and I'm like the oldest captain in the class. But it was great. I got a chance to help some other young officers, and it was from there that I got selected to go to West Point, back to where I'd been such a troublesome cadet, to be in charge of cadets, in charge of their leader development, in charge of aspects of their character development. And my classmates all thought it was funny, like, why are you going back? You were a huge troublemaker. And my approach was, well, yeah, I know what really someone should be getting in trouble for, and what other stuff is coachable, and what's a great kind of indicator that someone just has a bit of fire, passion, or intensity or something like that. And West Point has this relationship with Columbia University, where they send you to Columbia for a year, you get a master's degree, and then you go teach at West Point. You're in charge of cadet leader development. It was phenomenal. It was a great place to be. It was the most rewarding experience I ever had, working with young men and women who are about to be officers in the Army, coaching them, training them, giving them space to fail a little bit and then correct that and grow from that. It was awesome. But I kind of hit my limit on the Army at that point in time. I was dating my now wife. I wasn't really anticipating or feeling excited about more deployments. I couldn't look myself in the eye and say to a unit of soldiers that they had to give 110% to the mission anymore, because I wasn't there in uniform anymore. I knew I couldn't do that anymore. And I thought the one thing, the minimum standard that's demanded of an officer in leadership in the Army is that you do everything that you would ask your soldiers to do, that you are there every degree, 110%. If I'm saying you got to give everything you have to this mission, I need to be there in droves, and I couldn't be there anymore. And so it was a tough it was tough. It was a bit of an ethical challenge for me at that time. Do I just grind it out? I'm over 10 years of service. Do I just, hang on to retirement or whatever? And I was fortunate to work for a couple of great bosses. And so I talked to the colonel and the big colonel and the 1-star, and to a person, they were like, Ross, you know what you want to do. I'm here to support you. I'm here to help you in that transition. But if you're coming to me to convince you to stay in the Army, I'm not doing what's right either. And I thought it was kind of funny. I was like, man, if I worked with more officers like you younger in my career, maybe I wouldn't have hit that point of burnout so much, but instead I look back at it and say how fortunate was I to work with leaders like that at that time, and it wasn't just the officers. I two outstanding command sergeant majors at West Point, two amazing sergeant first classes who supported the work that I was doing with the cadets, both infantry platoon sergeants who are about to become first sergeants. And this was kind of their reset period before they go out to be a company first sergeant. And it was just, it let me leave the Army not only on my terms, but with such a great positive view of the future of the Army that it kind of is why I fell into nonprofit work a little bit. Is, I can't be there anymore. I know I couldn't do that role anymore, but how can I support what they're doing? How can I make sure that they have opportunities afterwards? And I think a lot about my departure from the Army and how lucky I was to have leaders like that invested in me and supported my transition out. I can do that from this side of the fence now at Higher Heroes USA.
You said something that I really want to touch upon. Coachable. Coachable is a very tough word for some people to digest, especially in the military, because you're like, we have rules, regulations, and policies. Whether you're a Marine, you're a seaman, or in the Coast Guard, in the Space Force, the Air Force, the Army, coachable.
Yeah.
You were a company commander. You've done it almost at all levels. And now you're in the nonprofit sector. How does one, as a leader, start to take on leadership qualities to where they can coach others? What makes a great coach within the military and nonprofit sector, in your opinion, Ross?
I mean, look, this ain't my 100% area of expertise, but I will say from my foxhole, curiosity about other people, curiosity about their situation. Like you can't grow yourself if you don't have a desire to learn. And I think, to me, like learnable, coachable, those terms can sound a bit like tough to people, like, people have different learning styles. And so I approach it from, do you have a sense of curiosity? Like if something isn't the way it's supposed to be, is your response needs to be interesting. Why? Like what possessed that response? And, people behave the way they behave because of who they are and the environment that they're in. And so anytime something happens, you've got to look at, well, was it something about them, their experiences, their worldview, what was informing their decision making? Were they having a bad day? Was it internal, external? What was challenging them there? And then what environment did I set up for them? And so as a leader, I think about a lot, like in the Army, what can I control? I can control the environment that I set for my team, and I can control my desire to learn about them. And I think that translates exactly into any other industry too. Like, yes, there's HR limits on different things. And the military is great. You can just go in and tell someone like, give me your medical records, give me your finances, print out this. We're going to figure out what's wrong together. I can't do that in any other industry, right? It's not like I'm just going to go pull somebody's medical records and make something happen. So instead I have to approach it from a curiosity and say, hey, are you struggling here? There's stuff I can and can't ask you, but what do you need from this working environment right now to be successful? What do you need from me as a leader? Do you need time, space, support? Do you need more on the plate, less on the plate? What, I would say that's the most important part in coachability as a leader and setting a capability for others to learn is a real well-intentioned curiosity. And the second is, willingness to demonstrate like kind of your full authentic self as a leader. We all have flaws. We all have like quirks and oddities. Like everybody's a weirdo in some way or another, right? Like, so if you're willing to embrace that as a leader and share aspects of that, you lower these barriers that allow other people. I push back a little bit on like bring all of yourself to work, because people grow up in different experiences. Who they are like comes from their worldview and everything. And sometimes that can create you may bring that into an office environment that says share everything of who you are, and that office environment isn't actually ready for all of that, like, and then it can create conflict. It can carry over, predispositions or judgments. So instead, I would just say is like, be willing to be authentic about who you are to the degree that you're comfortable, to share what helps people work with you well, what helps people know you and your thinking style. I'm a believer that part of my coaching practice is helping people understand how I interpret information and how I make decisions, and talking it over with them. Here's what I'm thinking about as I read this thing. Here's what that's making me ask questions around. Here's why that question percolates to the top of my mind because of this experience I had with this organization. And so that's what's feeding into that. And it's a process where eventually they start to learn, okay, now here's the situation or an opportunity. Ross is going to approach it with these kind of questions. And, oh, that gives me a thought. And then they follow that thread. I want them to not be me, but I want them to know what I'm thinking about. Where are my questions? Because I think that's going to frame up for them a platform to grow into and occupy that space as the best version of themselves. Like, I guess the last bit on coachability, I'd say, is one of my mantras in the Army and since the Army is like, if I'm trying to make every leader I'm responsible for be me, that's a huge failure, because the only person who can be me is me, and I'm a mess. I want them to be themselves as leaders. I want any leader to grow into that space, and hopefully there's stuff they can learn from me. Hopefully there's ways I can coach and train and empower them and give them that freedom and space to execute. But ultimately, the only way that they're going to be the best leader they can is by applying everything that feeds into the way they think, act, operate, and interpret it, and putting all that together, and then leading with intention. If they're trying to be Ross 2.0, well, nobody needs that in any organization. And two, they're going to be miserable. They're going to be trying to be who they aren't. And so I guess those are the biggest kind of buckets I have to approach coachability, is like that curiosity, that authenticity, and kind of recognizing you're not trying to make many versions of yourself. You're trying to give them that platform to grow into, to be the best version of themselves.
Wow, so true. So you leave West Point, you've experienced that burnt out. I would love to go more in depth in workplace burning out, like your fire just it dies slowly. But you get out of a governmental atmosphere that you've been a part of for years, almost over a decade.
Yeah.
And then you dive into the Independence Project. I don't know if a lot of people know what the Independence Project is, but
probably not many. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's educate them, Ross.
Sure. Yeah, I was struggling. Like, look, leaving the Army is a struggle for anyone, and probably everyone to some degree or another. And I was like struggling at the start of that. I had great support from Army leaders, and I thought a decent network, although I didn't know how to engage in it and leverage it and use it well. But I hadn't done the hard work of figuring out, what the hell am I going to do? Who am I in this non-Army life? So I was latching on with this sense of desperation to any interview opportunity I could gather. And they were awful. Man, I bombed some interviews, just atrociously. Just had this need to find a job, right? And I had a boss, a mentor who was kind of spend some time just kind of helping me digest and engage in some of those questions, talking through that. And as I was talking about my desire to look, I want to leverage my skills in operations, but I want to learn and have the space to employ more in general business activities. I want to lead HR activities. I want to lead finance activities, but I want to be connected to mission execution. a bit of a research background from going to Columbia, and so I like didn't want to leave that behind. And he said, well, you know, Hire Heroes has this new thing they're doing in partnership with some other groups that's aimed at disabled veterans employment, and it's exactly kind of that. It's a research effort mixed with program execution effort. That a lot of people don't know this, but nationally, disabled veterans have some of the lowest labor force participation rates and employment rates when you get into those 60% or above ratings from VA classified disability. And part of that hasn't really been uncovered, like the why of that. Could be that it takes so long sometimes to elevate your claims to those levels. So getting your disability rating up becomes kind of your full-time job, and then you sort of lose that connection to the labor market. It could be aspects of incentives are structured incorrectly, but what we tried to do was launch a research effort to see, could we do something to change that? Could we focus on the groups most at need that are struggling in this, where they're accidentally kind of inadvertently getting painted into a corner? So it's focused on, enlisted veterans under the age of 45 who are leaving the Army within a year, or leaving the military within a year from any branch, and really focused on those that were going to have a disability rating and putting them through a very intensive weekend-long training session that kind of uses all of the approach of Hire Heroes USA, but put it in a very intense cohort-based execution. We partnered with Dartmouth University and researchers from there that do a lot of labor economics research, who then ran longitudinal studies for 3 years afterwards, studying everything about, how are they working, what's their salary levels, and doing a bunch of measures on their physical health, their mental health, their emotional health, their overall quality of life. Employment kind of becomes who you are. Your sense of purpose is kind of getting up in the morning, put your pants on, and this is the job that I do. And in the military, that's so inherently connected to your identity. I think military service members especially need that thing that connects them to their identity. They need that purpose, and doing good work connected to a mission you believe in can be that. And so we ran this programmatics for a few years, ran a couple different cohorts of enlisted service members through this, and then we would compare them to performance with American Job Centers or other resources like that. And I mean, they were employed faster, better paying jobs, way better quality of life overall, even small increases in physical health that we weren't really sure that would happen, but it kind of did. That they ended up having better health and quality of life if they were able to get purposeful, gainful employment through a structured support system early. And we did a bunch of tests and stuff, measured a bunch of different things, put different incentives into the program to help them overcome barriers to work and things like that. But how I got there, it was almost luck, circumstance, right place, right time, talking to the right people. I mean, I think the more work you do of unpacking for what's driving me, what am I interested in doing, what makes me tick, the more opportunities you have for the right time, right place stuff to occur. Because when someone says, well, what do you want to do after the military, you can articulate that actually. But if you're like Ross, leaving the Army at the start, what do you want to do after the Army? And depending on who the interviewer was, depending on who the person was, it was whatever they did. Oh, consulting. I want to build microchip processors. I was distribute Pepsi products. Every one of these. I want to work at a bank, whatever. I applied and interviewed for all of these things, and it wasn't real. It wasn't true. I wasn't connected to where I had a desire. And so they all shot me down, which was good. Forced me to do the hard work that I had been avoiding.
So, so you execute the Independence Project. I mean, you had a budget of like 13 mil. That you had to oversee a large operation, and I could just imagine the data how many participants did you have during that project overall
Through the
with
two,
service members?
it's about
Yeah.
500 through the two
Wow.
different test groups.
Wow. I mean, and you have to take into account all of these stories, 500 different experiences, personalities, people from different backgrounds. So that has to have been a lot of measurables.
Yeah.
So after that, shortly, you get into a prestigious leadership program. And I want you to talk about that and your experience for those
Yeah.
5 months, Ross, because it's kind of a big deal. The George W. A presidential center is a reputable organization.
Yeah. So I actually like there's a whole little bit to that story too of how I even got there. As we were kind of doing the independence project, I knew I needed to learn more about business, and like as I great people I work with at Hire Heroes USA, I still work with amazing people here, but I knew I needed some formal help. And so I went to University of Georgia and got my MBA while I was working. And it's right as I was finishing up that, just before COVID hit, the CEO of Hire Heroes had an opportunity to move up to an amazing opportunity at another organization. And there's kind of a gap. There's going to be this gap of who is in charge. And so February of 2020, the board of directors asked me to be the interim CEO at Hire Heroes USA. And I said, well, I guess, yeah, I mean, I'm going to bite off more than I can chew. And then like 10 days later, COVID is declared a pandemic. And I'm like, what did I step in? Like now, we got funders are struggling with, resource allocation issues and all this stuff. And, invested in our team. Basically, like we knew it was tough. A couple of our biggest funders went bankrupt in 2020. And for a bit there, it looked like, are we going to be able to, what my biggest fear is like, I'm interim CEO here. Like, I don't want to furlough people. I don't want to have to fire people. I don't want this company to go bankrupt. This is on me to figure it out. And you know what? It wasn't just on me. Like, yeah, I had to steward that. I had to set the vision. I had to lead that. But I had an awesome team that cared about making this mission happen, cared about making sure everybody had a job here. Because if I can keep this person employed here, they can help so many more veterans find their job. And like, so to me, that carryover of that mission just was so impactful. So I just had an awesome leadership team that all invested in that with their personal time and energy and expert knowledge. And we not only kept 100% of the staff employed through 2020, we had our best fundraising year to date that year and our biggest impact year of putting more veterans in jobs than we ever had that year. At a time when the nation was struggling, we invested in ourselves and it paid off. And it paid off for those veterans and military spouses we helped get a job. And so as that was kind of wrapping up and I got the chance to stay full time as the chief operating officer at Hire Heroes, I said, well, I don't want to lose this momentum, what I've learned from this project. And I've always been fascinated by the George Bush Presidential Center. They have amazing programs aimed at veterans, aimed at public service. They have an outstanding relationship with other presidential libraries, with the Obama Presidential Library, with the Clinton Presidential Library, with the Carter Presidential Library, where they do what's called the Presidential Leadership Scholars Program. And I knew they had this veteran leadership program they called VLP. And I was just fascinated by wanting to get into that space, share what I learned about leading in business, but also what do we do here? What do we know about veteran employment challenges? And I don't know, I guess I snuck in a year when they were just kind of needed to make the numbers of people. It was intense. It's an intense 5-month cohort-based leadership development program. And it really is. Like you show up out there. Well, ours was half virtual, half in person. And so a couple Zoom sessions like this, but a bunch of times you fly out to Dallas and you're at the Bush Presidential Library. And they bring in phenomenal, like such admirable leaders. I mean, General Mattis came and spoke with us for like all day. Ambassador Burks, President Bush himself, two NASA astronauts, Johnny Kim and someone else came and spoke with us. General Najia West spent like 2 hours with us just talking about her experience, what it was like being the first female Surgeon General of the Army. Like, they come in and they share details about their leadership approach. And then throughout all of it, though, too, it's like very rigorous. Like, you're meeting with former people who were like leaders of the National Economic Council and are now professors at Stanford and stuff like that. And they're taking you through their approach to like, problem solving or like solution design or, whatever else. And I mean, researchers from Penn State were sharing with us about their efforts studying veteran employment and what stuff works and what doesn't. Like, you get the most intense learning experience I've been through in that type of a setting. And you're in a group of other people that care about advancing veteran issues in the United States. And it was a huge mix of amazing. I mean, we had like doctors, physicians, we had lawyers, we had people who are active duty service members, we had retired generals, and then me in the room, and I'm thinking, how do I fit in this space? Like and it turned out that I shouldn't have questioned myself. I should have just leaned into that experience a little bit more during it. Like, it was easy to get a little daunted when you're like, oh, this person's a retired 1-star. This person is like the head of this department of research psychology at some place. Like, there's a mayor, a mayor of a town. She's an Army veteran, mayor of Beaverton, Oregon, was in my class. And she kicks butt. She's doing awesome things for Beaverton, Oregon. It's like the second largest city in Oregon. And their mayor's an Army veteran who fought in war. Like, I didn't even know that. How awesome is that? What a great opportunity to learn from someone, Lacey Baby, who's out there changing lives. And how did her veteran experience, how does that inform her approach to being a mayor and her approach to leadership? Like, so long and the short of it is, if someone is interested in like going through an intense program that's really going to challenge you in a positive way, put you in a room of rock stars, and like just throw ideas around with each other and all grow together, like, sign up for the next round of the Bush program classes, because they are phenomenal.
Now we're gonna get into it, Ross.
Okay.
So let's get into what we're doing together now. Segue, because you COO of Hire Heroes USA, and everybody knows Hire Heroes USA. I mean, come on now. Veterans that are going to transition, service members that need to work on resumes, plethora of services. And now we are announcing that, officially the paperwork, the contract aside, it's done, Ross. Mu Beta Phi Military Fraternity Incorporated, as a part of our Liberty Work initiative to get veterans and their family members back to work. We are referral partners. I just want to get and then we're going to get into more teaching and sharing with the veteran community and our viewers and military spouses, whoever's watching this,
Sure.
What spurred this relationship besides my energy and us just kicking it and having so much fun just talking? What really, I'm shameless plug, I hooked this up.
Yeah.
But really what gravitated, you wanting to work with Mu Beta Phi Military Fraternity Incorporated? I'm just asking.
Well, yeah, because like what I think is unique about our approach at Hire Heroes is like, we want to reach every veteran, any era, any experience. And there's a lot of programs that reach the same veterans, right? Like, look, if you're a general officer leaving the service, if you're a senior ranking officer leaving the service, there's a ton of resources out there aimed right at you to support your transition. And look, they need a certain kind of support. You do 30 years in the Army, you are, yeah, you're approaching things through like the Army approach. Like you do need some help kind of unpacking that and changing your approach. But that's such a small selection of who's out there and serving. And Move Beta Phi, you guys are reaching different veterans that we aren't reaching already. And you're caring about them, not just through this transaction. It's not transactional, it's a relationship. It's a stewardship, it's a community. And we're an employment search program. We're not a community focused group. We're not a wraparound service. We don't do service projects. We aren't doing those things, but recognize the value of them. And I want to reach those veterans that are in that have identified, hey, I want this sense of community, the sense of brotherhood, and not just brotherhood, but then bringing my family into it too. That my struggle, my family carries part of that, or my success, my family celebrates part of that. And how can I incorporate that into them? And so, where Move Beta Phi sits and the work that you do and the community that you build touches an audience and builds them with a sense of community that we don't do, but that we thought, well, hey, this aligns really well, that we can do where we're good, and it can have this interaction where it's not a transaction, we're not paying bills on stuff, but towards that whole community approach or whole community approach of someone, can our services enhance aspects of their career search? I believe so. Will that make them more invested members of the community? Will that help them grow others? I hope so. I believe so. I think data has shown that. So for me, it made sense, absolutely, of, hey, you're doing outstanding work to build that community and invest in that community. We can provide our services that also support aspects of that growth to where we're like where we deliver, best in class support.
I just wanted you to drop the mic at the end. So let's get into just, I'm not going to keep you too long. Let's just get into, a little aspect of really trying to help somebody right now who's watching this, who's listening to this.
Sure.
And they may be transitioning or in the early phases of transitioning, or it could be a spouse or a family member who knows somebody that is serving, and they may be a year. Really, Ross, there is no like time gap on the transition, and what is before we get into this last topic of, overestimating our military experience, before I ask you that question and get your take on that, really, do you ever believe that there is a transition period? And if there is, when is the earliest time frame for a person, an individual, to think about it? When is that light bulb? When should it click with you, in your opinion?
I mean, I think yes and no, right? So from a researcher and data science perspective, like there's absolutes. Otherwise, it's hard to know our impact area. And so from that, like that hat on my head, it's a year before that DD 214 date and a year out, up to a year after. That's the window of the transition. That's just our research has shown that's kind of like the optimal window. As a person, like there's still stuff from the Army that I'm unpacking, I'm dealing with now. And I got out in 2016. So 6 years, I'm still navigating part of that. I mean, my dad got out of the Army, ages ago, and there's still aspects of the Army life that kind of percolate in him. And so is it 20 years? I mean, I think you always carry part of that. So it presents in different ways, right? Like when I just got out of the Army and was in meetings, like fighting, like, I worked with a guy who, my first CEO at Higher Heroes USA, Brian Stan. He was a famous UFC fighter. He played football at the Naval Academy. He was announcer on the UFC after he fought. Like he's now, just an amazing business leader as well. But Brian has a very commanding presence as a CEO, and he would end meetings and he'd be like, all right, let's do it, and kind of stand up to move out. And like my Army brain would kick into gear every time. And it was like, you got to stand up at attention, salute this man, and shout some unit motto right now. And there would be times where I'd grip in the desk, like, don't do that. Army brain, stop it. Like, so it takes a while to kind of unplug some of those things, but still, like, I say stuff like, my wife and I'll go on a trip somewhere, and I'll be like, I gotta download the car, and she's like, what, onto a thumb drive? Like, that's just how we talked in the Army. I can't deactivate that. So I think your transition takes time, and it's always going to be part of who you are. When you're preparing to leave the Army, I'm of a mindset that, like, if you're a few years away from your departure date from the military and you've recognized that it's coming, that you do need to shelve aspects of that, because your job at that time, you've committed to lead men and women in the military, and they count on you, they depend on you. And so if you're 3 years away and you know that at that end of that 3-year bill you're getting out, like, that's okay to know that. It's okay to start setting up pieces and parts on that. But for the first 2 years of that 3-year transition, you need to be pretty much all the way in on doing your military job. Sorry to say Army so much, like, it's just, right, like, again, the Army is kind of what I know, but your people count on you to be there, to be that leader in the service with them. That final year, though, it's time to start building in and counting on yourself and building out your network, asking yourself those questions, like, what am I good at? Not like using my MOS, but what of these skills and tasks and responsibilities I have, which ones do I like doing? Which ones am I really good at? Where do they intersect? What does that look like then in the non-military space? Who can I talk to out there? Who can I learn from that's done work that I'm interested in, or that I'm curious about, or that I think I will hate? Going in and saying, wait, I hear from a lot of veterans, I don't want to do sales. Well, life is sales, man. Greg, sales. It happens. Like, every job has sales. You want to be a CEO of a company? Sales is what you are doing. And so, well, why do you think you wouldn't like sales? What is it about that? Ask that question. Talk to people that do it. That is where, in that 1 year, you got to start doing that heavy work. And then in the 6 months before, you've got to be kind of churning and burning. Like, so you've got to know how to tailor your resume. You've got to know how to network. You need to be leveraging those skills. Nobody's going to hire you a year in advance of when you're available. Very few people will hire you 6 months before you're available. But in that 6-month window, if you're actively networking and having those conversations and really driving those conversations forward, people are going to keep you on the forefront of their radar. And then in that kind of 90-day window, then you could be locking in an opportunity so that, look, maybe you want to take time off after you leave the service, use some of that transition leave, go on a vacation. Awesome, do it. But still keeping that sort of timeline running, that you're building your skill sets, that you can activate it and land that job at that right time. It breaks me up to see outstanding leaders leaving the military and they're kind of atrophying. Their skill sets are dying because they aren't activating them and using them. And it's like such a loss to see outstanding people who could be doing great work, building themselves, building their community, being really invested in that they just can't find that right connection, that right opportunity, because it started too late, or they missed timing, or life got in the way a bit. So if you're able to start in that year before you transition and really start to build that habit base, that would be, sorry to meander there, but that's kind of how I'd approach it.
All right. So we're going to end this show off on a high note with a tip, Ross, a tip. Um, Oftentimes, veterans or service members that are still serving, reserve and guard, love y'all. I'm a reservist. Um, we can overestimate our skills at times. Just because you served in a combat environment doesn't mean that you're ready to lead in the boardroom necessarily. You know, you might have that can-do attitude, but that technical expertise might not translate over so well into the private sector or nonprofit sector. So overestimating our skills can be a downfall. What is the work? And this is I just want the Ross Dickman tip, what is the work that veterans and service members should be focused on instead of overestimating what they have already when they are trying to secure that next job? One tip. What have you learned, Ross?
I mean, that bring it back to that point I had about curiosity, right? Um, it's funny, like I've worked with so many veterans and we work with so many that like I can think of a lot who landed a gig that they were super excited about. There can be a vice president somewhere, and then they found out that I'm a vice president at this big bank on Wall Street, on the trading desk. And vice president means different things in different organizations. And a vice president at a major Wall Street bank is kind of just an entry title for everybody who's sitting on the trader desk doing, crunching the numbers and making those trades happen and hitting the phones. And get a vice president at, a small small business in your town, or a vice president at a manufacturing organization, or vice president of policy or advocacy group, is an entirely different level of responsibility. And so if you're curious about that, if you go into that and say, what skill sets work here? Not just have led this many people and I was responsible for this many dollars worth of budget and equipment. That's great that people want that accountability. They want the leadership. They want the intangibles, the stress, the competence under stressful situations. People want that. They want the high ethical character. But they also want you to know, like, hey, how are we doing on like actual free cash flow this quarter? Well, if you can't calculate that, if you don't know how to make managerial decisions off of the actual managerial finance of an organization, trying to aim for a position as a COO or CEO, educate yourself on what does that role need. You don't have to do it by yourself, though. Be curious. Go ahead and engage with those conversations. Find someone doing a job that you are interested in and say, hey, here's it, whether they're a veteran or not, ask the question. Don't do a sales pitch. Ask the question. Do you mind? Can I get 5 minutes on a call? Because I'm very curious about what you do. I'm fascinated by it. I would love to be where you are as I'm leaving the military. And I don't really know where to start. Can you describe what are the essential skill sets that you have? How does your day look? What makes your day happen? Because if you start with that sense of curiosity, it will prevent you from launching your resume at the wrong types of roles. And it's going to inform you to the point that you won't latch onto a title. Instead, you'll aim at the position that you want. And title and position are so different. Like, don't get obsessed with the title. Get excited about the work. What is it, the tasks, responsibilities, and focus areas that I would have in that position? What did they do in that role? And then find that alignment there, and then the title will work itself out. Like that would be kind of the one way that I would say to prevent kind of the overestimation or the underestimation of where someone could be, or the complete misalignment, is by being curious about what actually happens there.
All right, we're going to do a part 2, everybody. Don't worry. I mean, Ross just probably got somebody a job somewhere and they're like, hallelujah, thank you, Ross. Woo! So, I mean, that was some good stuff. I learned something actually right there, that I might utilize. So, Ross, this is that time. This is that time that I just throw you on the screen and you have to throw out the website, you know, and how people get connected, you know, with Hire Heroes USA. I mean, everybody kind of knows, but just throw out the website just to, you know,
Yeah.
entertain me.
All right. Well, look, if you're a veteran or a military spouse or an active service member or a reserve guard member and you need help with your career search, go to www.hireheroesusa.org. That's www.hireheroesusa.org and sign up to get help. Sign up. You'll get partnered one-on-one with one of our transition specialists, and they are going to be there. They are your advocate to help you along the way. They're going to help you with coaching, understanding your skill sets, helping you build that resume, how to network, how to use LinkedIn, how to interview. You get connected to our thousands of outstanding volunteers, our virtual career fairs, our job board, our employer matching services. All of that stuff is free. All of it is free for you as a service member. But you got to do the first step first. Register on the website, sign up for help. If you have, unique challenges, if you're a woman veteran, if you are a military spouse, if you left the service as a junior enlisted service member, we have dedicated teams who focus on those audiences because you have unique challenges in the way that the labor market looks at your resume. And so we have a dedicated team of experts there and a whole team that will help you with your federal resume. God bless them. They are my favorite team in the organization because they are doing the work I could never do. They get thousands of requests a year from people that want to apply for federal jobs, and just USA jobs is a tough thing to apply on. They will help you build your federal resume so you can be very competitive for a federal application.
Now, Ross, I'm gonna do the shameless. When they log in, you know, can we get the credit? Because we're on there, right? Yeah, just
Yes,
make
yeah,
sure.
yes.
Yeah,
Make sure
yeah.
when you said, how do you hear about us? On the drop down, it's like Mu Beta Phi.
That's it. That's it right there, folks. That's all you got to do. Just say, you know what, Mu Beta Phi, you done helped me. Boop, and it shall be done. All right, so you all in the PHIner Life Show land, you know what I'm gonna say. www.mbphikings2017.org. That is www.mbphikings2017.org. Latest and greatest. Go on the website, check out the podcast. We're on everything. Spotify, iHeart, Apple. We're on all the platforms with the podcast. Got the YouTube channel popping off. We are everywhere, doing everything, trying to connect everyone. Thank you so much, Ross Dickman, for coming on the show. You know, clapping it up. You know, just helping people, and just securing gainful employment and helping our heroes get what they deserve. Thank you so much for being on the show. This is your boy, Brother Hush. Till next time, peace.
Pleasure. Thanks, everyone.